Let me ask you a question. Not a dramatic one, not a scary one. Just a simple, honest question. What happens when you die? Not what you hope happens, not what you've been told, not what feels comforting, but what can we actually say carefully, scientifically, without pretending we know more than we do? Because here's the surprising part. Science does have an answer. It's just not the kind of answer most people expect. Let's start with something very ordinary. Imagine a candle burning on a table. You watch the flame. It flickers, it moves, it dances, it seems alive in its own way. It gives light, it produces heat, and for a moment it commands your attention. Now imagine blowing it out. Where did the flame go? Did it travel somewhere? Did it hide in the air? Did it escape to another place? The truth is, none of that happens. The flame didn't go anywhere. The flame was never a thing that existed independently. It was a process. A continuous reaction between wax, oxygen, and heat. When the conditions stopped, the process stopped. That's it. The flame's existence depended entirely on a particular arrangement of matter and energy under specific conditions. Now imagine yourself in the same way. What if you are more like that flame than you realize? What if your sense of self, your consciousness, your I am, is not a permanent standalone entity? Your body is made of atoms, carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, the same ingredients that have existed for billions of years and make up everything around us. There's nothing inherently special about the atoms themselves. What makes you different from a rock, a chair, or a tree is not the material, but the arrangement and the activity of that material. More specifically, it's the processes happening in your brain that create the patterns we recognize as personality, thought, memory, and awareness. Think of a whirlpool in a river. A whirlpool looks like a thing, moving and twisting in the water, but it isn't a separate object. It's a pattern created by water moving in a very specific way. Stop the flow, and the whirlpool disappears. Not because it went somewhere, but because the pattern could no longer exist. In a very similar way, consciousness is a pattern in the brain, a vast network of neurons firing in coordinated ways. The pattern of this activity is what we experience as our thoughts, emotions, memories, and self-awareness. If the activity stops, the pattern disappears. Your brain is not a container where you reside. There is no central control room, no homunculus watching the show. What you call you is the result of billions of neurons interacting in a complex, dynamic pattern. It's more like a wave traveling through a stadium full of people than a single object. The wave exists only because of the coordinated movement of many individuals. If everyone stops, the wave stops. It does not travel somewhere else. It simply ceases to exist. At death, your brain's activity stops. Oxygen supply ends. Neurons stop firing, and the electrical and chemical patterns that create your consciousness collapse. What we recognize as you ceases, not because it has moved, but because the conditions that made it possible are no longer present. Science does not find evidence of a self that persists after death, no hidden observer that continues somewhere else. Consciousness is a process, not a thing, and when a process ends, it ends. This is the first crucial step in understanding what science tells us about death. It is not a comforting idea, nor is it meant to be scary. It is an honest observation about the nature of life, consciousness, and what it means to exist. It invites us to rethink ourselves not as permanent entities, but as extraordinary, fleeting patterns in the universe. Let's look more closely at what this really means. Your brain is not just a lump of tissue, it is the most complex pattern of activity we know in the universe. It contains roughly 86 billion neurons, each sending thousands of signals every second. These neurons communicate through tiny electrical impulses and chemical signals, creating a vast dynamic network. Every thought you have, every memory, every feeling, every sense of I am, arises from the coordinated activity of this network. It is not something stored in one place, like a file on a computer. It is the process itself, continuously happening in real time. Think of a stadium full of people doing the wave. You've seen it happen. A group of spectators stands and raises their arms, then sits down, and the movement travels around the stadium. Now ask yourself, where is the wave? Is it in one person? Is it in a particular seat? No. The wave exists only as a pattern across many people. If everyone stops moving, the wave doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't continue somewhere else. it simply ceases to exist. Consciousness is very much like that wave. It exists as a pattern of activity, not as a standalone object. When the neurons stop firing at death, the pattern collapses, and the experience of being ends. At this point, people often ask, but where does consciousness go? It's a natural question, but it's based on a hidden assumption that consciousness is a thing that can move or travel. Science does not support that idea. Consciousness is not a substance, a fluid, or an object that can survive outside the brain. It is a process that depends entirely on the brain's activity. When that activity ends, so does consciousness. This is why the phenomenon of death is so hard for the human mind to accept. Our brains are wired to imagine continuity. We cannot truly conceive of non-existence because every thought we have is grounded in existence. Trying to imagine a state where you do not exist is like trying to look at your own eyes without a mirror. Yet there is a subtle truth here that many people overlook. While consciousness, the pattern of activity, ends at death, the atoms that make up your body do not vanish. Carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, hydrogen, they are conserved. Physics is very strict about this. Energy and matter cannot be destroyed, only transformed. After death, your atoms return to the environment, becoming part of the soil, the air, the water, even other living organisms. In that sense, nothing you are made of is lost. You become part of the ongoing cycles of matter and energy in the universe. While the pattern that made you disappears, the raw material continues, participating in the vast flow of existence. This perspective can be both humbling and extraordinary. For billions of years, the universe existed without you. There was no awareness of missing out, no suffering from absence. Then, for a brief moment, an extraordinary pattern formed in the universe. Your brain, and for a fleeting period, consciousness arose. You became a way for the universe to observe itself, a temporary focal point of awareness in a vast cosmos. This fleeting existence is precisely why life feels so remarkable. From the universe's perspective, you are not an eternal entity, but you are a real vivid phenomenon while you exist. Understanding death in this way transforms the question from "where do I go?" to "what am I right now?" You are not a permanent object, not a soul trapped in a body, but a dynamic process, a wave of activity that arises, exists, and then ceases. Recognizing this makes your experience even more precious. You are a temporary pattern in an immense universe, alive for a brief, breathtaking moment, and then the process ends. Yet, in that impermanent process, everything you have ever felt, thought, or loved occurs. That is the reality science uncovers, honest, awe-inspiring, and grounded in the evidence of the natural world. Even though the pattern of your consciousness ends at death, understanding what continues can completely shift how we think about existence. The atoms that make up your body do not simply vanish, they rejoin the larger cycles of matter and energy that have been moving through the universe for billions of years. The carbon in your body, for example, may become part of a tree, a cloud, or even a molecule in the atmosphere. The nitrogen, oxygen, and hydrogen that once formed your cells are recycled into the soil, water, and air, contributing to new life. In a very real sense, the building blocks of you persist. They do not carry your thoughts or memories, but they continue as part of the ongoing story of the universe. You are transformed, not annihilated. And in this way, life becomes a process far larger than any single conscious being. This perspective highlights the difference between patterns and material. Patterns, like your consciousness, are ephemeral. They require very specific conditions to exist. Take the analogy of music. The notes of a symphony exist only while they are being played. The sheet music can exist forever, but the music itself, the sound, the harmony, the movement, is temporary. Your consciousness is like the music. It is created by the precise interaction of billions of neurons, and when that activity stops, the experience disappears. The atoms remain, but the pattern vanishes. Science shows us that this distinction is fundamental. Matter is conserved, but specific arrangements, specific processes, are fragile. Humans struggle with this concept because we are wired to look for continuity. Our sense of self is so deeply ingrained that imagining a total absence of experience feels impossible. We naturally project continuity forward and backward in time. Before we were born, we did not exist, yet we do not remember it because there was no consciousness to record anything. After we die, the same principle applies. No consciousness, no memory, no awareness. Trying to picture it is like trying to see the color black that contains no light. It is outside the realm of direct experience. Yet, there is a remarkable symmetry in this. The universe has been flowing for billions of years without any one of us, and yet it is capable of forming the extraordinarily complex patterns that produce conscious experience, even if only briefly. The fact that consciousness arises at all is astonishing. It is a rare, fleeting pattern in an otherwise silent, indifferent universe. And when you consider that you are experiencing this pattern right now in the present moment, it is an extraordinary occurrence. From the universe's perspective, you are a temporary lens through which it observes itself. Your existence is not permanent, but it is undeniably real while it lasts. This understanding reframes the meaning of life and death in purely scientific terms. Life is not about preserving an eternal you, because there is no evidence of such a thing. Life is about participating in an incredibly rare process, a temporary pattern of matter and energy that gives rise to conscious experience. Death is not a mysterious journey to another place. It is the natural end of a process, the collapse of a pattern that has existed only because conditions allowed it. Recognizing this can profoundly change how we view reality. Instead of fearing non-existence, we can appreciate the fragility and rarity of conscious experience. Life becomes more precious, more intense, precisely because it is impermanent. Every thought, every feeling, every sensation is part of a brief, luminous phenomenon in a vast and largely silent cosmos. In the end, science suggests that the remarkable fact is not that we survive death, but that we exist at all. And for a brief, shining moment, the universe experiences itself through us. This is a perspective that is both humbling and awe-inspiring, revealing the extraordinary significance of a single lifetime against the backdrop of the cosmos. This perspective invites a deeper reflection on what it truly means to be alive. If consciousness is a temporary pattern, a process arising from the intricate interactions of billions of neurons, then every moment of awareness becomes a kind of miracle. Your thoughts, feelings, and perceptions exist only because the right conditions align perfectly in your brain at this exact time. This means that your experience of reality, everything you see, hear, feel, and think, is a delicate phenomenon, occurring here and now, dependent on a vast network of interactions at the atomic and molecular level. Every heartbeat, every breath, every flicker of thought contributes to a system so complex that it is beyond full comprehension. Yet, you experience it directly, intimately, and subjectively. Understanding consciousness as a process rather than a thing also reshapes how we think about identity. We often consider ourselves as continuous entities, the same I from birth to death. In reality, the self is constantly changing. Every second, neurons fire and die, molecules are exchanged, memories are formed and forgotten, patterns shift imperceptibly. The you who existed a year ago is already different from the you reading these words now. Life is not about a permanent self. It is about a sequence of temporary, interrelated patterns, each one a fleeting manifestation of the underlying processes that make awareness possible. If consciousness is like a wave, it is created and maintained only as long as the conditions allow. Once the brain ceases functioning, the wave collapses. There is no observer left behind. This is difficult to accept because we are so used to thinking of ourselves as central, enduring observers. But in the scientific view, the mind is more like the wave itself than the water it moves through. You are the activity, not the atoms, and when the activity ends, so does the phenomenon we call you. Yet this does not diminish the significance of your existence. The atoms that composed you continue their journey through the universe, entering new life forms, returning to the soil, the air, the water, participating in countless processes that will outlast any single human lifetime. Your matter persists, even if your conscious pattern does not. The universe does not forget the atoms, it continues to use them, transforming them in ways that are unimaginably vast and complex. In this sense, you remain a part of the cosmos, contributing to its ongoing processes even after death, though not as the you recognize. There is a profound lesson in this perspective. Life is precious precisely because it is impermanent. The universe produces conscious patterns extremely rarely, and the fact that you exist to experience this pattern is astonishing. Before you were born, there was nothing, no awareness, no longing, no perception. After death, The same state of non-awareness returns, yet within the brief window of your existence, you are experiencing the universe from a unique vantage point, a vantage point that will never recur in exactly the same way. Every thought, sensation, and emotion is an ephemeral jewel, a temporary manifestation of matter and energy in an otherwise vast, silent cosmos. Recognizing that you are a process also encourages a different kind of humility and curiosity. It reminds us that the world is not made to revolve around a permanent self, but to allow extraordinary phenomena like consciousness to arise, however briefly. Life is a fleeting alignment of atoms, a temporary emergence of order from chaos. And in that emergence, the universe experiences itself, if only for a moment, through the lens of your awareness. Death is not a journey somewhere else, it is the inevitable end of a process. Yet in understanding this, we can see existence in a new light, temporary, fragile, transient, but breathtakingly real. It is a perspective that blends the rigor of science with the awe of contemplation, showing that even without permanence, life, and you, matter immensely. Once we fully embrace the idea that consciousness is a temporary pattern, we can begin to see life and death in an entirely new way. For most of human history, people have sought meaning in continuity, an eternal soul, a personal identity that survives beyond the body. Science asks us to look closer, to set aside assumptions and examine what the evidence actually tells us. Consciousness is not something that exists independently of the brain. It is a dynamic, emergent property of highly organized matter, arising from the activity of billions of neurons interacting in complex networks. It is temporary, fragile, and dependent on very precise conditions. When those conditions cease, the pattern collapses, and the conscious experience disappears. This understanding can feel unsettling because it challenges deeply ingrained intuitions about the self. We are naturally inclined to think of I as permanent, as a central observer who continues over time. But in reality, the I you experience in any given moment is already gone the next instant. Your thoughts, memories, and emotions are constantly changing. The neurons in your brain are continuously forming new connections and dissolving old ones. The self is not a fixed entity. It is a process, like a wave moving across a field of water or the flicker of a flame. Its impermanence is built into the very nature of how consciousness exists. And yet, recognizing this impermanence does not diminish the reality or significance of experience. On the contrary, it intensifies it. The fleeting nature of consciousness makes every moment extraordinary. The universe has been unfolding for billions of years without your presence, and yet for a brief window of time, an incredibly complex pattern has emerged, your brain, which allows the universe to experience itself in a unique way. Every thought, sensation, and perception you have is a rare and remarkable occurrence. Life is a temporary alignment of matter and energy that produces conscious awareness, and that awareness is fleeting. Appreciating this fragility can transform how we approach our lives, our decisions, and our relationships with the world around us. The atoms that compose your body do not disappear at death. They are recycled into the environment, becoming part of new living things, water, soil, and air. Your material continues to participate in the ongoing processes of the universe. What ceases is the specific pattern that constituted your consciousness. Life, in this sense, is like a candle flame. The atoms remain, but the process that produced light and warmth ends. Death is simply the termination of the pattern, not the annihilation of the matter that made it possible. It is a natural outcome of the laws of physics and biology, predictable and universal. This perspective also reframes how we think about meaning and significance. Life is not meaningful because it is permanent. It is meaningful because it is rare, fragile, and remarkable. Consciousness is a brief window in which the universe is aware of itself, and your experience is a unique, unrepeatable manifestation of this process. Understanding death as the end of a pattern rather than a journey elsewhere encourages a focus on the present moment, the lived experience, and the appreciation of the extraordinary phenomenon that is your awareness. In this way, science does not diminish the wonder of life, it illuminates it. It shows us that even without permanence, life is profound, awe-inspiring, and deeply significant because it allows consciousness to exist, if only for a fleeting moment, in the vast expanse of the universe. If we carry this perspective even further, it becomes clear that life and death are part of the same natural process, a cycle governed by the laws of physics and biology rather than by intention or design. Consciousness arises when matter is organized in a highly specific and dynamic way. It depends on electrical impulses, chemical signals, and the precise interactions of billions of neurons. These interactions create patterns that, when stable enough, manifest as awareness, thoughts, and the sense of self. The moment these patterns can no longer be sustained, due to disease, injury, or simply the end of life, the process ceases and consciousness disappears. It is not that you are taken somewhere, the process itself ends. There is no separate entity to carry forward. This can be a difficult idea to accept because human brains are wired to expect continuity. We are programmed to anticipate ongoing existence, to imagine that there is always a you that persists through time. Our minds struggle to conceive of non-existence because every thought, every mental image occurs within consciousness. Trying to imagine a state in which no awareness exists is like trying to see complete darkness when your eyes are open. Your very capacity to imagine is constrained by existence itself. Yet understanding this limitation is crucial. It shows us that the concept of eternal self, or consciousness that survives independently of the brain, is not supported by the evidence. Consciousness does not move or travel. It is an emergent pattern that arises under very specific conditions and disappears when those conditions are no longer present. Yet even as the pattern of your consciousness ends, the matter that constituted your body persists. The atoms that once made up your cells, your organs, and your brain continue to exist. They will be recycled into new molecules, new organisms, and new processes in the ecosystem. Carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and hydrogen, the building blocks of life, never disappear. In this sense, nothing is truly lost. While the pattern that made you ceases to exist, its constituent parts persist and continue to participate in the natural cycles of the universe. Your matter contributes to life in ways that are invisible, ongoing, and far-reaching, even if the specific pattern that produced your conscious experience is gone forever. There is a profound philosophical implication in this understanding. Life is precious not because it is permanent, but because it is fleeting and rare. Consciousness is an extraordinary phenomenon in the universe. For billions of years, the cosmos existed without your awareness. Then, for a brief moment, an extremely complex pattern arose in the form of your brain, giving rise to experience, thought, and perception. This window of awareness is temporary, but it is real, vivid, and meaningful. Every sensation, emotion, and thought is a singular event, a pattern of matter and energy that occurs for a brief moment before disappearing. Recognizing this can heighten the appreciation of life, encouraging us to engage fully with the moments we have, rather than clinging to the idea of an eternal self. Understanding consciousness as a transient process also reframes our sense of identity. We are not static entities. The self is a constantly shifting pattern, a temporary alignment of matter and energy in which awareness emerges. Every second, your neurons form new connections, old memories fade, and new experiences shape the pattern of your consciousness. You are never the same you as a moment ago. This impermanence is not a flaw, it is the fundamental nature of existence. Life is a brief, remarkable alignment of forces, matter, and energy that produces the rare and extraordinary phenomenon of awareness. Death is not a journey somewhere else, it is the natural conclusion of this pattern. This perspective does not diminish the significance of life. Instead, it elevates it. Every moment of conscious experience is extraordinary precisely because it is temporary. Awareness is a fleeting window through which the universe experiences itself. Life is rare, fragile, and astonishing, and your existence, however brief, allows the cosmos to witness, reflect, and participate in itself. By understanding death as the end of a pattern, rather than the loss of a permanent self, we gain a scientific framework for appreciating the remarkable phenomenon of consciousness. In this view, life is not about eternity, but about the extraordinary, fleeting moments in which existence becomes aware of itself. A brief, luminous phenomenon in the vast, silent universe. If we follow this line of reasoning even further, it becomes clear that thinking about life and death as processes rather than endpoints completely transforms our understanding of existence. Consciousness is not a thing that can be packaged, stored, or transported. It is an emergent phenomenon, arising only when matter is arranged and activated in very specific ways. The billions of neurons in the brain communicate through rapid electrical impulses and chemical signals, creating complex dynamic patterns. These patterns give rise to everything we experience as self-awareness, thought, emotion, and perception. Without the precise interactions of these neurons, consciousness cannot exist. When the brain ceases to function, the pattern that constitutes consciousness collapses. There is no observer that continues somewhere else. Consciousness simply ends. This understanding is challenging because it runs counter to the intuitive way humans think. From a young age, we are conditioned to view ourselves as enduring entities. We talk about our life story, our future self, and our past experiences, often imagining continuity where, scientifically, none exists. Our brain is wired to assume that consciousness is permanent because every thought we have reinforces the sense of self. Imagining a state in which there is no consciousness is essentially impossible. Every attempt to conceive it occurs within consciousness itself. Yet the evidence from neuroscience and biology is clear. Consciousness is dependent on physical processes in the brain. When these processes stop, the experience of you stops. Even though consciousness ends, the matter that made up your body does not. The atoms that composed your neurons, muscles, bones, and organs persist. They continue to participate in the cycles of nature, becoming part of soil, water, air, and even other living organisms. Carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, and hydrogen, the fundamental building blocks of life, never vanish. They are recycled endlessly, joining new patterns of matter and energy in the universe. While the unique pattern that produced your conscious experience collapses, its components continue to contribute to the broader, ongoing processes of existence. In this sense, you leave a legacy, not in memory or awareness, but in the ongoing participation of your atoms in the cosmos. This perspective reshapes how we think about the value and meaning of life. Life is not significant because it is eternal, but because it is rare and fleeting. Consciousness is an extraordinary phenomenon, a brief alignment of matter and energy that allows the universe to experience itself. For billions of years, the universe existed without you, and for billions of years to come, it will continue without the specific pattern that is your consciousness. Yet, for a brief window, the universe became aware through your brain. Every thought, feeling, and perception is a unique event, occurring only once and never repeating. Recognizing the fragility of consciousness encourages a deep appreciation for the present moment, for the rare phenomenon of being alive. Understanding the self as a dynamic process rather than a fixed entity also reframes identity. The you of any given moment is not the same you from a second, a year, or a decade ago. Your brain is constantly rewiring itself, forming new connections and dissolving old ones. Memories fade, experiences accumulate, and the patterns of neurons shift continuously. Life is therefore not about a permanent self, but about a series of temporary patterns, each giving rise to conscious experience. Death is simply the end of the current pattern, the natural conclusion of the conditions that allow consciousness to exist. Yet within this impermanence lies profound beauty. Life becomes extraordinary precisely because it is fleeting. Consciousness is a rare window through which the universe observes, experiences, and participates in itself. Every moment of awareness, every thought, emotion, or sensation is a remarkable event. Death does not erase significance. It highlights it. Science shows us that life is a temporary, fragile, and astonishing phenomenon, a fleeting alignment of matter and energy that produces consciousness. Recognizing this allows us to see reality in a new light, not as a story of eternal survival, but as a brief luminous dance of existence in which the universe becomes aware of itself, if only for a moment. When we accept that consciousness is a temporary pattern rather than a permanent entity, it fundamentally changes how we perceive the world and our place within it. Every moment of awareness becomes a fleeting miracle, a unique arrangement of matter and energy that exists only because conditions are precisely right. Your brain, with its billions of neurons and trillions of connections, is producing a pattern so intricate that it gives rise to thoughts, feelings, memories, and self-awareness. This pattern is extraordinarily fragile. A lack of oxygen, a disruption in neural activity, or even small physical damage can end it instantly. Consciousness exists only in the right conditions, and once those conditions fail, the process ends. There is no separate observer that continues. The phenomenon itself ceases, much like a flame extinguished when the wax and oxygen no longer support combustion. Yet the end of consciousness does not mean the end of the matter that composed it. Atoms are neither created nor destroyed. They are transformed. The carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen that made up your cells continue to exist, returning to the environment to become part of soil, water, air, or new life forms. In this way, your matter continues to participate in the universe, even if the pattern of consciousness that made you alive ends. Life is not about the permanence of consciousness, it is about the extraordinary temporary alignment of matter and energy that allows it to arise. Death is simply the conclusion of a pattern, not the destruction of matter. Understanding consciousness in this way also reshapes our understanding of identity. The self is not fixed. You are not a static entity that persists from birth to death. Every second, your neurons form new connections, and old ones dissolve. Thoughts, emotions, and perceptions constantly reshape the pattern that constitutes you. The you that existed a year ago is already different from the you experiencing these words right now. Life is not about a permanent self. It is about a constantly evolving pattern of awareness, each moment unique and unrepeatable. Death is simply the final collapse of this pattern. This perspective also highlights the remarkable rarity of consciousness. The universe has existed for billions of years without your awareness. Yet, for a brief window, an extraordinarily complex pattern has formed, allowing consciousness to emerge. You are a temporary lens through which the universe experiences itself. Every thought, every perception, every emotion is an extraordinary phenomenon that occurs only once. Recognizing the fragility of this pattern heightens the value of each moment. Life is precious because it is rare, not because it lasts forever. The impermanence of consciousness makes every sensation, every experience, and every insight profoundly significant. Thinking of life and death as temporary processes also encourages humility. The universe does not revolve around individual consciousness. Patterns emerge and dissolve constantly, far larger and more complex than any single human mind. Yet within this vast impersonal system, your awareness occurs. For a fleeting moment, the universe becomes conscious of itself through you. This realization does not diminish your existence. It illuminates it. Life is a brief alignment of matter and energy that produces conscious experience, a rare phenomenon in an otherwise silent cosmos. Death is the natural conclusion of this process, the inevitable end of the pattern. Yet understanding this gives us a profound appreciation for the fleeting, fragile, and extraordinary nature of life, a perspective that is both scientifically grounded and deeply awe-inspiring. When we examine life and death through the lens of science, we begin to see existence not as a story of eternal continuity, but as a series of temporary, delicate patterns. Consciousness arises when matter is arranged in extraordinarily specific ways. The brain's neurons fire in intricate sequences, creating patterns of electrical and chemical activity that give rise to thoughts, feelings, and self-awareness. This process is astonishingly complex, far beyond the capacity of any single person to fully understand. Yet it happens naturally, governed by the laws of physics, chemistry, and biology. It is a phenomenon that emerges spontaneously when conditions are just right, and disappears when they are no longer met. Death is simply the collapse of this pattern. There is no you that departs, no consciousness that survives independently of the brain. The experience of being alive is inseparable from the processes that generate it. This perspective can feel unsettling because it challenges our intuitions about identity. We are accustomed to thinking of the self as continuous, unbroken, and enduring. We speak of my life, my memories, and my future, as if there is a single, unchanging observer witnessing all events. Yet, neuroscience shows that this sense of a persistent self is itself a pattern, constantly reshaped by experiences, emotions, and neural changes. Every thought, every decision, every fleeting moment alters the configuration of neurons and the connections that sustain consciousness. You are not the same person you were a year ago, a month ago, or even an hour ago. Life is a succession of overlapping, shifting patterns, each temporary, each fleeting. Death is merely the ultimate collapse of the pattern that makes consciousness possible. Even as the pattern of consciousness ends, the matter that composed it persists. The atoms of your body, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, hydrogen, are not destroyed. They are recycled into the environment, returning to soil, water, air, and the living systems around us. In this way, you continue to participate in the universe even after your conscious experience ceases. Your specific pattern of awareness is gone, but the physical building blocks of life remain, contributing to new processes and new forms of matter and energy. Life is therefore both ephemeral and eternal in different ways. Ephemeral in the fleeting patterns of consciousness, eternal in the persistence of matter. Understanding death as the end of a pattern rather than a journey somewhere else also reframes how we value existence. Consciousness is extraordinarily rare. For billions of years, the universe existed without awareness, and for billions of years to come, it will continue without your pattern of consciousness. Yet for a brief window, an extraordinarily complex alignment of matter and energy arises, allowing consciousness to exist. You are a temporary lens through which the universe experiences itself, even if only briefly. Every thought, every emotion, every sensation is a unique event, never to be repeated in exactly the same way. This rarity gives life extraordinary significance. It is not the permanence of existence that matters, but the remarkable fact that consciousness arises at all. Recognizing the impermanent nature of consciousness can transform how we live. It encourages presence, attentiveness, and a profound appreciation for the fleeting moments of awareness we experience. Life is not a rehearsal, it is a singular phenomenon, a temporary alignment of matter and energy that produces consciousness. Death is not a punishment, a journey, or a transition to another realm. It is simply the natural conclusion of the pattern, and in this realization lies a deep, scientifically grounded beauty. Life is rare, fragile, and extraordinary, and the brief window in which consciousness exists allows the universe to experience itself. This perspective encourages both humility and awe, offering a vision of reality in which the temporary is deeply meaningful, and the fleeting moments of awareness are nothing short of miraculous.